Hey guys, Justin here, back with my first impressions of The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. So the last few days I've been feeling a little under the weather, and turns out it was like the greatest weekend to be sick, because with a game like this, you can just like lose days and days and days. I've been spending a lot of time in Hyrule lately. I'm probably at the 15 to 18 hour mark at this point, and I feel like I'm finally over the Tears of the Kingdom hype. You know, I've played through it, I can see some of the flaws, I can see what's awesome about it, but overall I feel like I can talk about it now without just gushing about how good it is. Well, we'll see how much of this video doesn't turn out to be just gushing, because it really is a fantastic game. Anyway, these are my first impressions, totally spoiler-free. Well, as spoiler-free as I can make them. There'll be no story stuff, just gameplay spoilers. So if you're sensitive to spoilers, you really want to go into this game as blind as possible and you haven't played yet, just pause the video now. You probably didn't click on the video to begin with. But if you're here still, just exit out and come back when you've played the game. Okay, so the first thing that I noticed about playing this game is just how huge it is. I mean, Breath of the Wild was huge, but Tears of the Kingdom makes Breath of the Wild look small in comparison. RGT made a video a few days ago about he wasn't going to review Tears of the Kingdom, and I thought he was going to say because it was too big, it's hard to review. Instead, he said that, you know, this is just a game that you have to experience for yourself, and I totally agree with that. But for me, I don't think you can really review a game like this. It's such a huge game. Everybody's play is going to be, you know, totally unique, especially with the new building mechanics that they have. I just don't know how anybody can review this game, you know, totally. I get, you know, a few outlets had it early and they were able to spend a lot of time with it, but even if you spent, you know, 50, 60 hours with this game, yeah, okay, you'd be able to review it, but you still wouldn't see most of the stuff that the game has to offer. It's just incredible how much content they've packed into this game. I'm totally blown away. To me, it doesn't even feel like a game anymore. It's more of an experience. It's this huge sandbox that has some Zelda elements, but it's really more than that. It's just this gigantic experience. It's hard to say that Tears of the Kingdom is groundbreaking because it's building on so much of what, you know, Breath of the Wild was, but to me it kind of feels groundbreaking. Like it's just so huge, there's so much to do. Really incredible. Another thing I noticed about this game is way harder than Breath of the Wild was. I can't believe kids play this game. It's especially tough in the first few hours when, you know, you only have a handful of hearts, you don't have much stamina. You run into a group of enemies and they'll one-shot you. Like, without question, you will be one-shotted and you're starting over. And sometimes the respawn points really aren't that forgiving. They'll put you right in front of the people who just killed you without hesitation. Some of it can be really frustrating, especially once you leave the Sky Islands and you go down to Hyrule and you're facing off against the Moblins and some of the other enemies. They are so tough and they have, you know, pretty good weapons, and suddenly if you're overwhelmed and it's just you, they can overwhelm you really quickly. And the next thing you know, you're fighting one enemy and then another one comes up with a big rusty sword with a rock attached to it and, you know, gives you a concussion. Even the normal enemies in Tears of the Kingdom feel tougher than the ones that were in Breath of the Wild. Maybe it's just me. I mean, I played Breath of the Wild a few weeks ago again to prep for this, and I feel like it was much easier and the enemies weren't nearly as tough, but maybe I'm misremembering now. I don't know. What do you think? With Tears of the Kingdom, every single time you leave a save point, you run the risk of getting destroyed. This is a dangerous world. I think one of the things that makes this game that much more difficult than the first is, like, all the weapons suck. Every single one of them is bad. You know, they're all rusty because of, well, won't get into that. But you won't find a really good weapon in this entire game. It really forces you to use the craft mechanic to build some, like, hideous monstrosity of a weapon to fight with, and the durability is not going to be there at all, so don't get used to any weapon you have. One of the concerns I had about this game was that Hyrule was going to feel very similar to the way that it felt in Breath of the Wild. You know, I'm super familiar with that map, played through it for like 120 hours or something over, the past few years. And I was worried, is it just gonna be more of that with the sky, maybe some underground levels? But truly, the world of Tears of the Kingdom feels so much different. Some places are like recognizable, but as far as maneuvering around, things feel very different. For me, it was tough to use my Breath of the Wild knowledge, and as far as geography goes, to make use of that in Tears of the Kingdom. It's pretty tough to navigate around. One of my biggest complaints about Breath of the Wild was that, obviously it's great and, one of the greatest games ever made, blah, 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 blah. But the map felt sort of empty to me. Like you'd be running around and you just wouldn't see people for a while. Horses were scattered really far away from each other. You just spent a lot of time like with your thoughts, running around a field or climbing up a mountain. There just wasn't a whole lot going on. Even enemies were kind of sparse. Do you remember that? It was just like, you would go a long time without a point of interest, right? Like the geography itself was interesting, but as far as like something to interact with, somebody to interact with, you went a long time between seeing those kinds of people. Hyrule is a huge kingdom. Even after the Calamity, you expect it to be full of people, and for Breath of the Wild, it just wasn't. They've really fixed that with Tears of the Kingdom, though. As you're running around, you're seeing people, like these NPCs that are going about their normal life. They're commenting on things that are happening in the world. They're talking to you. There are lots of hidden side quests. It feels like a much more lived-in world. It feels like a bigger, like breathing, more organic world than what we had in Breath of the Wild. Okay, so enough with the gushing. There are a couple of things that really stand out to me as, I don't want to say negatives, but they're kind of negatives. I think most people will agree that weapon degradation sucks. It just sucks. And it sucked in Breath of the Wild, and I think it's even worse in Tears of the Kingdom. Like I said earlier, the weapons already suck, right? So you're only finding bad weapons that are rusty and old and they're gonna break after a few hits. You're only finding those sorts of weapons anyway. So you're just going through weapons so much quicker. And it's intentional, right? They want you to use your new powers to combine, weapons with rocks or weapons with fire hydrants and create new stuff, right? But I just wish sometimes there was just a normal weapon for me to use. Like a normal good weapon for me to use. And okay, so the second negative, and I know I might take some heat for this, so if you don't agree, let me know in the comments. I totally get it. But Tears of the Kingdom doesn't feel like a new game to me. I know, I just said all of those things about how much better it is than Breath of the Wild, how I'm appreciating it more than Breath of the Wild. But the more I play through it, the more it just feels like just Breath of the Wild DLC. Now, a huge DLC, and I think it's an awesome game and well worth the $70 price tag, but it just doesn't feel like a totally fresh experience, even with the new crafting mechanics. It feels weird to even complain about that, so often we're telling companies, hey, just give us a sequel. Build on the foundation of what you already have and give us a sequel that's just a little bit better, and then I'm complaining about it now. Wouldn't it be awesome if we got a Super Mario Odyssey 2 that was based on the mechanics and even some of the gameplay of the first one? I would really like that. We got that with Super Mario Galaxy, basically. But with Tears of the Kingdom, I'm just feeling a little blah. I mean, it's fun. I'm really enjoying it. I spent a lot of time in it. But it just doesn't feel like it has its own identity. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. It doesn't feel like it has its own identity as its own Zelda game. It feels like it is totally tied to Breath of the Wild in a way that I don't think you had with, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Those have totally different looks and feels, and this one just gets a little samey. Okay, but with that said, I was texting Matthew about Tears of the Kingdom a day or two after it launched, and we had both been playing it a good bit by that point. And I said, Matthew, this might be the greatest game ever made. And I stand behind that. From just a development perspective and what they were able to do, and how few glitches and bugs there are in this game, just to let you be totally creative and build whatever you want to build, it might be the greatest game ever made. I don't know how Nintendo or I don't know how Zelda goes on after this. Like, I don't know what the next thing is. Do we just get more of this? Or do we get something totally different? Do we get a 2D thing? I hope we get a 2D thing. But kind of getting a little rambly here, but I don't know what comes after this. This game is so big, and if you take both of them, you know, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom together, how do we get bigger than this? How do you follow this up? I don't know. It's an incredible game. I'm enjoying every second I spend with it. Even though, like I said, it's got some issues with their weapon degradation. I feel like it really doesn't have its own identity as a Zelda game, but I think those are small nitpicks. It's just a fabulous game, and you know, if this is the swan song for the Switch, these are the perfect bookends. These are the absolute perfect bookends. So that's all I've got, guys. Matthew and I are going to do a more in-depth conversation about Tears of the Kingdom in our podcast, so you can be able to look out for that. It'll show up in your feed. And if you like this video, like and subscribe, right? But until next time, thanks for watching and thanks for subscribing.